evening. I'm Melissa Ridgen with your APTN News Weekend. Well, 3.5 years ago, the first missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls hearings took place in the Yukon. Now the territory announced a strategy to end the violence against Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit Plus people, making it the first jurisdiction in Canada to do so. Here's APTN's Sarah Connors with what that strategy will entail.
It's a day many have been waiting for.
Today marks a historic day. The completion of the Yukon Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls and 2S+ strategy.
Today's event marks the first jurisdiction in Canada to reveal its strategy on missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
With this, we will work together to create a better Yukon where Indigenous women are safe and respected.
The MMIWG inquiry started in Whitehorse in 2017. Over 2 years, 24 hearings and events were held to gather statements from across Canada. The inquiry's final report was released last year, demanding 231 calls for justice. Now, the territory has promised to answer many of those calls, earning praise from one of Canada's top members of Parliament.
Yukon's plan contains a vision statement. It needs to be echoed everywhere in Canada.
Changing the story to uphold dignity and justice has 31 priority actions to end violence against Indigenous women and girls. It's composed of 4 goals, and each part includes a handful of directives, like improving mental wellness support for victims and perpetuators of violence, greater investment in education and training of Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit Plus people, and reviewing the Yukon's Police Force 2010 review of the RCMP. The minister in charge of the strategy says it's a benchmark for other jurisdictions to follow suit.
We have created a whole of Yukon response that will guide us for the next 10 to 15 years.
Dozens of dignitaries signed their commitment to uphold the justice and dignity of Indigenous women and girls.
Furthermore, I commit to my sisters and my daughters and my granddaughter.
Funding for the strategy will be determined as part of the implementation plan, which hasn't been determined yet. And many partners will work together in implementing the strategies, like government, First Nations, and women's groups. A historic first and what will be one of many answers to calls for justice.
No one can do this alone, but together we can.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
After 3 months of negotiations, Sipekne'katik First Nation has called off talks with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. Chief Mikmaq says that during discussions to implement a moderate livelihood fishery plan, treaty rights were not acknowledged. Angel Moore has this.
Sipekne'katik First Nation has called off moderate livelihood fishery negotiations with the feds. Chief Mikmaq says treaty rights are non-negotiable.
You know, they're trying to cap our rights right off the get-go, and they have no right to do so. So it's not a very good move on Canada's, part, and just a dirty move in my mind.
SAC says the Department of Fisheries and Oceans is trying to lump the moderate livelihood fishery with commercial licenses, just as the commercial lobster fishery season opens in St. Mary's Bay.
3 months go by, and then they throw that at us, just as they clean the bay out for traps, as the commercial industry is starting. Doesn't sit well with us.
3 months ago, Sipekne'katik First Nation launched their moderate livelihood fishery. The launch was met with violence from non-Indigenous fishers who say the fishery is illegal. But over 2 decades ago, the Supreme Court of Canada upheld the treaty right of the Mikmaq to earn a moderate livelihood. SAC says the DFO are risking nation-to-nation relationships by ignoring treaty rights.
100%. DFO was just trying to make sure that no rights were upheld.
SAC says talks must be based on treaty rights in order to continue. The Department of Fisheries and Oceans Canada did not respond to request before deadline. Meanwhile, Sipekne'katik fishers will still keep fishing as the moderate livelihood fishery season ends next week. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Sipekne'katik, Halifax.
Thanks, Angel. Well, he wasn't invited, but the mayor of Oka showed up to a peaceful protest held by Sipekne'katik residents to mark the International Day of Human Rights. The Mohawks say Oka has ignored these rights for hundreds of years, but Pascal Cuvillon says that their cause is fake news. Lindsay Richardson reports.
We've been putting up signs. I don't know what the threat is. It's just signs. You know, we're stating that we're done with this. You know, this is happening right across our territories, right across Canada and Turtle Island. And, you know, enough is enough.
It's International Human Rights Day, so residents of Sipekne'katik came out to the Oka golf course to demonstrate. Its proposed expansion was the catalyst for the 1990 crisis, but developing on disputed land is still a problem in 2020.
Where are the people supposed to go when all this land is gone, when it's all developed?
The group says Oka is abusing their human rights.
For all the Indigenous human rights defenders who have been killed by colonialism and who continue to be criminalized, we do this for them.
In a statement also calling out lack of transparency, free, prior and informed consent, and inaction by governments.
Oka keeps taking land, and the federal government is really doing nothing to protect the human rights of the people here in Sipekne'katik. We're tired of being pushed around. We had a very difficult summer between the Golin development and the archaeological digs. So we're fed up.
Oka is pushing for heritage status of the Pines. There are rumors the golf course too will be put up for sale. The plan is to keep pressure on while gathering peacefully.
We know that there are two standards of rights, and you know, as far as we're concerned, the way we are treated, we're like the disposable people of Canada. So we're not tolerating this.
He's here by himself.
Neither, apparently, is the mayor of Oka.
It's a fake news. The municipality of Oka want to save the trees.
But from Sipekne'katik's perspective,
this is our land. This is our building. You're standing on Yukon territory.
The exchange went on several minutes, but the land disputes persisted over 300 years.
The golf course is not sold. It's a fake news. The municipality of Oka want only the peace. The golf course is not sold. The municipality of Oka want to save the trees.
So you contradict yourself.
Yeah,
we don't believe you. We don't believe you. Whatever you say, we do not believe you.
We caught the mayor on his way out.
C'est pour ça que je suis venu ici, pour rétablir les faits, pour rétablir la paix. Parce que Mme Gabrielle, présentement, là, ce qu'elle fait, là, c'est qu'elle veut mettre la chicane entre nos deux communautés inutilement parce que c'est faux ce qu'elle dit.
Residents had their own questions.
I don't understand how there's so much animosity and anger and hate between our people.
On est pris, nous, entre les revendications, puis entre le gouvernement fédéral. Donc, les citoyens d'Oka, on est pris entre les deux. Tu sais, moi, j'étais pas là il y a 300 ans.
Canada may not be getting involved, but Quebec did by end of day. Indigenous Affairs Minister Yann Lafrenière says he's appointing a negotiator to identify cohabitation issues. They'll report back to Quebec by end of March 2021. Despite the disruption Thursday, the group continued a peaceful march. Though 30 years have passed since the so-called 1990 crisis, they say real discussions have not yet begun. Lindsay Richardson for APTN National News on Sipekne'katik, Mohawk Territory.
The federal government tabled a new UNDRIP bill in the House of Commons last week. It follows the efforts of former NDP MP Romeo Saganash's private members bill, which failed to get through the Senate and become law. Tabling Bill C-15 is a Liberal promise from the last election, but like the former Saganash bill, this one also has its skeptics. Jimmy Pashagumskum spoke with some of them.
Justice Minister David Lametti announced the new legislation on Thursday, saying that Indigenous groups, including the Assembly of First Nations, were all consulted in its development. Alma Brooks is with the Native Women's Association of Canada. She calls that statement deceitful, and in fact, people weren't consulted properly.
We are the rights holders. We are the rights holders. The people are the rights holders, not AFN. AFN is a government-funded lobby group. That's all. And I don't care how many times they change their charter. They do not speak for us.
At the presentation Thursday, the only issue National Chief Perry Bellegarde had was that it would take 3 years for Lametti and his team to develop a national action plan. Bellegarde wants it sooner. Mary-Ellen Turpel-Lafont is a law professor at UBC. She agrees with the National Chief.
I just don't want to see delays and divisions, and I'm worried about that. So, it will be really important to see who's going to be in charge of this project, how quickly. Like, I would like to see them engaging already on things like racism and violence.
Also present Thursday was Romeo Saganash, the architect of C-15's predecessor, C-262. It died in the Senate due to the obstruction of Conservative senators. As with C-262, the federal Conservatives have a problem with consultation and pre- and prior informed consent.
I don't think anyone wants a new piece of legislation to end up putting us in the courts more often than not and actually hampering the reconciliation journey. So I think clarity is absolutely important so that people understand what it is, what it isn't, and we don't see that clarity in this document.
Turpel-Lafont doesn't share Conservative concerns.
I think there's so much misunderstanding. It's almost like people peddle this misunderstanding that somehow FPIC, free, prior, informed consent, is some sort of veto to shut down the economy. And that is just myth.
Turpel-Lafont says it could take 5 years from today before Canada finalizes their action plan. And that's if the bill passes this time around. Jamie Pashagumskum, APTN National News, Ottawa.
We need to take a break, but still ahead, how the COVID vaccine will roll out across Canada. Stay with us. Welcome back. Big news out of Ottawa earlier this week. Health Canada approved a COVID-19 vaccine for use across the country. Initial doses of the Pfizer vaccine are expected to arrive in Canada this coming week. A limited amount will be part of the initial distribution. But what does this mean for Indigenous communities, some of whom have been hard hit during the second wave of the pandemic? Brittany Hobson gives us a breakdown of how the rollout will all work.
Canada will receive up to 249,000 doses of the Pfizer vaccine by the end of December. Doses will be administered at 14 delivery sites across the country. It's up to provinces and territories to determine how the vaccines will be distributed. A report from the National Advisory Committee on Immunization puts at the top of the list residents in long-term care homes and healthcare workers. AFN's Ontario Regional Chief Roseanne Archibald is part of the province's vaccine distribution task force. She says Indigenous groups in Ontario will likely not be part of the initial rollout.
We understand that there are limitations in phase 1 because of just the number of the vaccines is low. But as we move forward, we are on the priority list, and with great patience and proper logistical planning, we will be able to get those vaccines out to First Nations wherever they are. That's the goal.
Indigenous communities are part of the NACI's priority groups. First Nations, especially in the prairie provinces, have been hit hard during the second wave. But with the limited amount of vaccines available during the first rollout, experts say it will be some time before these communities will see them.
It would be really great if we could start to get some vaccinations happening in our communities, in our Indigenous communities. I would say even in the next couple of months would be really great.
Logistics around delivering the vaccine also comes with challenges. The vaccine must be stored at temperatures below -70. A second vaccine from Moderna is expected to be approved and will likely go out to communities. Melanie McKinnon is part of Manitoba's First Nations pandemic response team. She says planning this rollout is the first of its kind.
There's still a lot more questions and answers with respect to the vaccine rollout and a lot of planning to do. And this is probably going to be, on a global scale, the most complicated distribution in any of our kind of shared history.
The territories have been designated a priority group, but will not be receiving the Pfizer vaccine anytime soon because of the storage requirements. They are also looking at the Moderna vaccine. Nunavut was the last place to have cases of COVID-19. Planning for distribution has begun.
In our territory, we have 25 communities, and to deliver the vaccine in our communities, it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of effort. So we really appreciate our fellow Canadians that they recognize we should be in the priorities list.
Yukon is waiting to release its rollout plan, but Premier Sandy Silver says far north communities will get priority status.
Once we find out the dates, the quantities, those two variables really do weigh on prioritization as well.
As the provinces release their own rollout plans, with many prioritizing frontline workers and seniors, there are still questions on how it will affect First Nations living in urban centres.
How do we make sure that they get the information of where to go and how to make sure that they're vaccinated as one of the priority groups?
In places like Manitoba, First Nations people living off reserve make up more COVID cases than people living on reserve. Premier Brian Palliser says there needs to be more directive from Ottawa.
Winnipeg has a significant population, for example, of Indigenous folks who need to know when they're going to be able to get this vaccine. And we need to coordinate that to protect all of us.
The Manitoba Métis Federation has also called on Canada to set aside vaccines for its community. Today, the federal government confirmed it will work with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis groups to create a rollout plan that will include the urban Indigenous population. Brittany Hobson, APTN National News.
Shmatawa First Nation is still struggling with the COVID-19 outbreak, and cases have skyrocketed. The military and other organizations have been called to help, but some of them are not there yet. With more on the situation, here's Daryl Stranger.
Yeah, thanks, Dennis. The community of Shmatawa First Nation has just been absolutely rocked by the COVID-19 virus. There are currently 264 cases of COVID-19, and 221 of them are on Shmatawa First Nation in the community. Shmatawa sits approximately 750 kilometers north of Winnipeg and has a population of a little more than 1,000 people. Chief Eric Redhead says the community needs help now.
We're past the breaking point. We've broken. We need boots on the ground right now, because our boots are out for the counts.
Now, 5 members of the Canadian Red Cross are in the community, and they've actually taken over the community's pandemic response, as the local pandemic response team is actually either isolating due to exposure from the COVID-19 virus, or they've actually tested positive for the virus themselves. Now, members of the Bear Clan are also arriving today to help with whatever the community might need. 6 rangers are being deployed to the community, although it's not really clear when that they're going to be arriving. In an email from the Department of National Defense, the Rangers will, quote, provide assistance to the community in the production and distribution of real-life support requirements such as food, firewood, and care packages. And they will also be doing other tasks over a period of 30 days that they will be there. And Redhead outlined some of the specifics he hopes the Rangers can assist with upon arrival.
What we need right now is we need isolation units. We need their military expertise in terms of medical stuff. We need their nurses, their doctors. Right now, our pandemic response team is very, very fatigued. They're tired. They're overworked. We need a relief for them. No community wants the military in their community. We don't want that, right? But we need it right now.
Now, the MKO has also penned a letter with Chief Redhead to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau asking that seniors be evacuated from the community to be closer to health services if any health services are required for them. Perry Bellegarde also stated on Twitter that he'll be writing the Prime Minister in support of this plea. Daryl Stranger, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Thanks, Daryl. We have to take another short break, but when we come back, help for Indigenous women entrepreneurs struggling through the pandemic. Welcome back. A new program designed to help Indigenous women in business got off to a slow start earlier this year due to COVID, but it's now bursting at the seams due to its success. Here's Annette Francis with that story in Prairie Edward County near Picton, Ontario.
So come on into Shira Barberstock is getting just a small taste of exactly what Mickey Colton's Horse Sense business does.
If you walk down the middle, the horses can't reach you. If you want them to touch you, you can. You're going to stop before each stall and just get an impression of them.
Horse sense isn't so much about learning about how to ride a horse. It's more about self-awareness.
Horse sense is an equine wellness business. It's under the FEEL principles, which is Facilitated Equine Experiential Learning. So that is the certification and the training that I have. So I use my horses to help people interact and to get authentic and become authentic and find their emotions.
Colton began Horse Sense after her retirement from a 30-year career as a pilot in the Air Force. She soon found out that she needed some expertise in how to create a business plan and how to look after the finances. And then last spring, she joined a new training initiative called QuayBiz.
And so getting this has just given me incredible exposure and training on how to do those kind of things. It's been great.
Barbara Stock is the brains behind QuayBiz. The Eastern Ontario initiative helps Indigenous women in business like Colton.
It was actually Queen's University that started the program, so the We Can program. They received funding through the Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy, and we had an opportunity as a company, so our company is Aguajo Equal Source, to bid for the program, and we were successful, so we're leading it.
Over the past 3 months, Barbara Stock led Colton and 9 other Indigenous entrepreneurs in achieving their business goals through online business training and mentorship programs. She says in spite of having to switch to online training due to COVID-19, the program has been successful.
It's been challenging for Indigenous women entrepreneurs and for all entrepreneurs, in fact. But it's also shown a lot of resilience. Some of the women were sharing that with COVID, with a bit of a slowdown time, it's also given them time to be able to work on their business. So they're spending more time strategizing and working on it.
But for Colton, it's had the opposite effect.
COVID has actually driven people out into nature. It has, because people are so kind of trapped because of the disease, that I think it's driven them into nature. Because of my business is really done mostly in the outside, it's done in nature. It has been an advantage in a weird way for me.
Today the tables have turned. Colton is teaching Barbara Stock a few things face to face.
Riley, could you maybe come over here? Thanks.
Barbara Stock says it's been great.
They cannot walk away. They haven't got the option, but here he has the option he chooses to be with you.
Yeah. Thank you, Riley. Thank you.
You're welcome. Let me breathe in your ear.
That actually warmed me up a little bit. Thank you. Thank you for this experience.
According to Barbara Stock, BizQuay will be accepting a new round of applications from aspiring Indigenous entrepreneurs next April. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Prince Edward County.
It's really nice to be able to share this with people.
Well, that's your APTN News for the weekend. Be sure to get caught up on anything that you may have missed at aptnnews.ca. We have lots of news for you there. Of course, I'm Melissa Ridgen. Have a safe weekend.